Hello everyone, welcome to a special episode of the Retro series where we're currently looking at football management games. Donut Donny here as always. How are you all doing? I hope you are well. Now, warn you, this is going to be a pretty long episode because we are looking at 17 games all in a row. But again, as I just stressed, it is a special episode. We're looking at basically Cult Games' football management games, all the ones that they released, which was 17, would you believe it, overall. Now, Cult Games has always been one of my favorite companies, and again, as I was doing the football management series, I didn't realize they were doing so many, and I also didn't realize that Cult Games were actually a budget company of D&H Games. Then, while playing the game, some of the games especially, it made completely sense because a few of the games which we are going to be looking into reminded me of the full price games which D&H Games did, especially on the bench, for instance, and its links to Football Director 1 and things such as that. But Cult Games, the games we looked at were from 1988 right up to 1992, and they did so many football games, as I said before. We're going to have a quick look at some of the adverts that Cult Games did before we start with the first game in the series that we're going to look at. So if you just look at here we go. So here we go. Here's an advert done in around 1988-89. As you can see here, Cup Football, Soccer Star, On the Bench, Soccer Q. All these are going to be featured in the video that you'll be seeing very soon as we go through each one. I'm going to go through each game and rate it, and then right at the end of the video, please stay until right at the end. I'll give you my top 5 favorite cult football games. So there's one of the adverts there. So we'll look at Crash Magazine. You can see here all these games being mentioned on the bench: Soccer Q, Cup Football, British Super League, International Football. All these games should be quite familiar to you if you have watched the full series because we have covered a lot of them. Just to let you know, when the new series starts, when we leave the football games in January 2026, we will be going to feature some more of these cult games, like for instance Boxing Manager, The Boxer, Wembley Greyhounds, such like all different other sport games that Cult did. So we're not going to forget about all these other games. So please, it's going to be quite a while when that happens. That's not happening until the new year, next year, 2026. So good 7-8 months away. But anyway, that's another advert, and then the final advert. So here we go: On the Bench, Soccer Q, Cup Football, Soccer Star, British Super League, International Football, Soccer 7. All these games you see here, all these football games are going to be put into this series, this episode. So please stay tuned. And again, I must warn you that this episode is a pretty long one. This is going to be well over 30 minutes. But I hope you stay with me and enjoy this episode. And if you can wait until the end as well, then I'll give you my top 5 on the top 5 cult games, football management cult games. So let's go straight to the first one. Two-Player Soccer Squad, released in 1991. Episode 69, released in September 2024. Views 300 plus. Overall rating 3 out of 5 stars. So the first one in the series we're going to look at, we're going in alphabetical order, not release date. When they were released was a Two-Player Soccer Squad. Obviously this is the multiplayer game. I've got the video here. I will run it, which is what we're going to do for each of the series. The games, the videos are going to run so you can see the gameplay as I'm chatting. I have muted the sound because then you'll be hearing me in this episode talking about the game while I'm talking about the episode, which will be a bit confusing for you guys. So I decided to mute the game, and so you can actually mute the sound to the game so you can actually watch this game going along while I'm chatting about it and giving you sort of like an overall summary. So we're going to do that for each of the 17 games. There is one exception game which we'll see later on where there's no video. So this is Two-Player Soccer. This is a very decent game for multiple players. Obviously one more, you can play this solo if you want to as well. But it was I would say it was quite an average game overall, hence why I gave it that star rating. The match screen is pretty average as well. If we just skip through the actual match highlights, here's the match highlights, and you can see that in this game currently I've got two players. I think I'm the Wrexham boss and Cardiff boss, if I can remember correctly. So you can see here the game's ticking along. Oh, actually, that's just the game finishing. But it goes in, I think, in times 10 minutes and stuff like that. It just tickers along, and it was a quite average game. I thought it could have been improved. There we go. It was half time. Here we go. So yeah, obviously I haven't gone back to this game since it was originally recorded, which was well over a year ago now. And so yeah, I would say it's an average game, but it's a two-player game. I think you would really enjoy this. But anyway, that is a two-player soccer squad. British Super League, 1989. It was episode 18, released in September 2023. Views currently 900 plus. Overall rating 3.5 stars. The next game we're going to look at is, of course, British Super League, or as I called it when I did this video, the Anglo-Scottish Super League, because no clubs in Wales or Ireland, Northern Ireland, were featured at all in this game, which I thought was a bit strange. So why are you calling it British Super League when only two kingdoms were mentioned in this game? It was generally an okay game, popular with people watching this and playing this though. I think it had potential, but it was average overall. There was a lot of things that were quite frustrating with this game. The player selection I had a lot of trouble with when I did this episode. I can remember that quite clearly. There's many stats missing, like you didn't know who was the better player, so it was completely random at times, I thought, which when I was trying to select players. They had some good stat screens though, which are very good. But for instance, you can see here this player Brady. It just didn't tell you how good he was. Was Brady better than the other centre forward, or was like Higgins? Was Higgins better than Brady? It just didn't give you any stats in those screens. If we skip to the actual games themselves, they were quite. You can see the graphics are quite simple. This game also was released in the late 80s, you remember, and it was different, but I thought there was better games who had better match highlights than this one. That's why I didn't rate it very high at all. But anyway, that was British Super League. Cup Football, released in 1988. Released episode number 67, done in September 2024. Total views so far 550 plus. Overall rating 4 out of 5 stars. Probably my third best game overall. Okay, the next game we're going to look at, of course, is Cup Football. I actually enjoyed this, to my surprise. When I first looked at it, thinking it didn't look anything spectacular, but overall it's actually quite a decent game. There's a bit of sound in the game. Obviously, I've muted this so you won't be able to hear the game sound, but there's a good use of color and font. You can change all the players' names. You can change all the teams' names if you wanted to. There is a transfer market system in there as well. I thought, overall, I was quite surprised. I thought this wouldn't be very good, but actually turned out to be much better than I thought it'd be. I'm just skipping some screens here so you can try to see other things. Look, that stadium screen's quite nice, and I think when a goal is scored, the crowd around here actually gets quite animated, so which is actually quite fun. It's cup football. There you go. They just scored a goal there. This is more like it's cup football. This is more European football orientated, and but yeah, overall I thought cup football was a good game, and I really enjoyed this one. Anyway, that is cup football. Football Champions, released in 1988. It was episode 17, released in September 2023. Total views so far 480 plus. Overall rating 3.5 stars. So the next game we're looking at, obviously is Football Champions, and this reminded me a lot of the double in that every team had real life players and you had to go through every match screen of every game before you saw your team and see how they performed, which can be a little bit frustrating, but shows you how much in depth this game was. This will probably would feature in my top 10 cult football games. There you go. There's a bit of a spoiler for you. It's not in my top 5. But yeah, this is League and Cup. It's generally pretty decent. There's no sound in this game. Again, all the players from all sides are in this game, real life players as well. Here we go. I'm the Bristol City manager here. There's only 3 divisions though, which is slightly disappointing. But you got plenty of options in this game, and you can select whichever division you want to see the options, and then the league tables. Here we go. This is the Division 3 league table just coming up now, and you can see there's 20 sides in each division, so there's 60 sides in this game, so it's pretty damn detailed, and each side has got their real life players, so the database is actually very good. So, but one of the few drawbacks for me is that you have to go through every side before you get to your side. So if you're in Division 3, it's a bit of a wait until you see your side. If you're a Division 1 side, obviously it's completely the other way around. You'll see your side coming up, and then you have to wait until all the other sides have finished their games. But overall, it's a decent game, and that's why I gave it the 3.5 stars. And it would also feature, I think, in my top 10 cult football games, but it's not a top 5 game, no. But anyway, that is Football Champions. The Footballer, released in 1989, episode 12, August 2023. Total views so far 530 plus. Overall rating, just 2 stars out of 5, I'm afraid. So it's The Footballer. Not one of the best ones Cult Games did, I'm afraid. It's pretty basic. It does have 4 divisions, which are really good. Not many other the Cult Games did 4 divisions. I think the player names are pretty random on this. The match highlights are not great either. There's not many screens in this game. There's only a few, and it goes quite fast. I suppose that's one of the reasons why there's only a few screens, because there's not much data. It needs to go through each screen. The highlights, this is the match highlights, and as you can see, you don't actually see any highlights themselves. You just see the game tickering along, and then the goal scorers coming up, and then you then just get the league table on that. There's not really much more to say about the Footballer. It's one of the poorest ones of the lot, I'm afraid, and it was a game I probably won't go back to. International Football, released in 1989, episode 68, done in September 2024. Total views so far 660 plus. Overall rating 4 out of 5 stars. Definitely in my top 5 games. International Football was actually quite surprised when I actually started playing this game. It was I thought it wouldn't be very good. It was a budget international game. This was, I think, the first. It wasn't the first, no. Actually, it was one of the later ones we featured international football, but it was the one of the few cult games that actually went over to international football, not the domestic side. And it was probably one of the first games that I could actually be a team not from Europe either. Here I became manager of the Guyana South American team, which I'd never heard of until playing this game. I just paused it at the moment. You can see all the various options you had in this screen. I actually was very surprised how good this game actually was, as I just mentioned before, but because of the amount of options you had. Remember, this is a budget game, and there's an editor there. You can change all the countries' names. You can change all the players' names if you wanted to. If we start playing the video now, and I had a lot of fun. This video, when I was recording it, was well over 30 minutes long, which meant it was also a good idea if I was enjoying the game or not. If I wasn't enjoying the game, be under 15 minutes. Obviously, all these player names are made up. These are not real player names, and but I stuck with it for the whole episode, trying to get Guyana in past this qualification. Even though the match screen you can see here is quite basic, there were team strips here, so that was very good to see. You can select your formations, your method, style, where you can use the wings, where you can use the long ball, where you're going to go attacking, defending. We're going to go, hard tackles and stuff like that, all in this game. And again, this you have to remember, this was a budget game. So if you go back to this episode, this is episode 68, so released quite a few months ago. You can see that I actually was Guyanese manager, but then I went later on to become England's manager because my Guyanese side just failed qualification in the World Cup. But come on, we had Argentina in our group. How tough was that? Which is also quite strange because I wouldn't put Ghana. I don't think Ghana are actually in this South American group. I've never seen them feature. So yeah, again, I would say give international football a try. It's definitely surprised me how actually quite good it actually is. Would it feature in my top 5 cult games? You have to wait and see until the end of the video, of course, and see if it does feature. Um, but yeah, it was very enjoyable. League Football, released in 1991. It was episode 12, released in September 2023. Total views so far 680 plus. Overall rating 4 out of 5 stars. A surprise one, this one. Definitely in my top 5 cult games. League Football was another surprising hit. I didn't think I would enjoy this game either. This was one of the earlier episodes when we featured a cult games football game, and League Football was actually episode 16. It's got well over 600 views. I think it deserves a lot more than that. Released in 1991, and again, I was quite surprised how good this game was. It was very short. It was only 17 minutes long, but I still enjoyed playing it. In this game, there was a lot of options you can see there. You can also change players, teams, and manager names. So it's good way to edit the game. You can see the use of color was very good as well. Had this manager screen, which I don't think I've ever seen on any other cult game or many football manager games, to say the least. So you had all the list of the managers, and these are real life names as well. Some of those names are real players or former players, obviously. Um, it was a pretty decent budget game overall. Not very realistic, but you had transfer markets, you had players available. It's easy to get into, I think. Let's see if we can find some match highlights for you, because I think the match highlights are pretty brief. Fixture list. There we go. There was some funny match highlights. I think that made the game. So the actual match screen itself was decent compared to other cult football games. You actually had a little animation screen here where you can see if your players would score goals or not. In most cases, didn't, because the opposition seemed to score a lot more than you. That features a lot in these games, though. That you always start in a very tough side that you get. You don't get many, you know, bonuses and stuff like that. But the match highlight screen and the match screen itself was good compared to, for instance, the other games that we've just looked at, and some games that you will see in the future of this episode. That this is definitely one of the better ones. And so yeah, I definitely was surprised about League Football, and I did enjoy it. So did it feature in my top 5 cult football games? Again, you have to wait and see until the end of the video. The Match, 1991. It was episode 17, released in October 2023. Total views so far 660 plus. Overall rating 3 out of 5 stars. So the match had promise, I would say. It had some sound. The match screen is quite decent. There was a lot of screens on this budget game, which a lot of the cult games didn't have that many screens. But as you noticed, the players didn't have any ratings. So again, we had that problem where you don't know if a player was better than the other. So you just had to experiment. But it had this formation selection screen, which the only other game that has this that I've seen out of all the games I've reviewed is the Double. The Double had a very similar formation screen like this, almost identical. And yeah, it's a very unique way of selecting players into what position. The match had a lot of screens, as I said before, but they're very basic, most of the screens. It had a limited transfer list as well. There's only 10 teams per division. None of these player names are real, so let's just skip and see if we can show you a game, because I think that's what you're interested in. Here's the transfer market, a little bit limited, as I said before. I think most of the cult games, football games, were limited transfer markets, transfer listed. So let's skip. There we go, the match screen highlights. This will remind you of a game coming up later on about this match highlight screen. Looks very similar. So you can see probably some of these games were made by the same person, I'm guessing, because they updated the graphics or changed the graphics slightly to make the game slightly different compared to previous release. But the match screen was all right. Again, as I said in other episodes and also this episode, it's better than some, but a lot worse than others. But yeah, that's why I gave the match only about 3 stars. I think it would struggle into my top 10. So again, a spoiler, it's not going to be in my top 10 or top 5. But anyway, that is the match. On the Bench, released in 1991, it was episode 2 of the Retro series, done back in May 2023. It's also one of the most viewed episodes, currently 1.7k in views. Overall rating, this has to be a 5 out of 5. It's definitely the best one of the cult games. Now, of course, we're going to come to probably the best one of the whole cult games. Try not to give you any clues here if it's going to be in the top 5. Well, it's going to be in the top 5, obviously. On the Bench, it's also one of the most viewed episodes of the whole series, well over 1700 views, and even more by the time of this recording, I'm sure. What can we say about the On Bench? It's just a very fun game to play. I just couldn't believe it when I was playing it that it was actually a budget game. I've seen a lot of full price games that are a lot worse than this one, and by the amount of comments I've had, people in the various Facebook Spectrum groups, they all praise this game. It deserves a lot of credit. There's many options on this. One, I suppose, disappointment, if you have to look at some negatives, is there's no transfer listing on the bench. It's just you just have to go and scout players, and then when you scout players, you then put in the bid in for that player. As I mentioned right at the beginning in the introduction, this reminds me very much of Football Director 1, mainly because of that scouts, that you have to go and scout players and then suddenly the player appears on the transfer list. So I can see where they're getting that from, even though On the Bench was, I think, released after Football Director. Lots of screens, limited transfer, lots of screens, sorry. No sound at all On the Bench, but I don't regard that as a negative because a lot of the football games and the whole retro series have not have sound. Some, in case of Football of the Year, have too much sound, but this one did not have any sound. But you can see there that you have a lot of fun playing this game. I would again describe this as the mini Football Director. And I can also see why so many people have enjoyed playing this. If we skip a few screens here, I'll show you a match screen. So you get your, here you go, that's the transfer, that's a scouting window. I'll skip into a match screen for you. There we go. Oxford against Torquay. So the game will be ticking along, and you see goals being scored. It does remind me a little bit of Football Manager as well, with the defense, midfield, and attack ratings. Players get ratings, obviously. You can see the B there, that means Donut got booked. You can see goal scorer, who scored the goal, league position. So many positives about this, and it's definitely going to be in the top 3. I think it'd be quite obvious that it would be up there. But anyway, On the Bench, what a great game it was. From the best to probably one of the worst, sadly. Professional Footballer, released in 1991. This was actually the Christmas episode, episode number 30, done in December 2023. The views 650 plus. Overall rating, sadly, only 2 out of 5 stars. So we just looked at probably one of the best cult games, football games they did, which was On the Bench. We're now looking at one of the worst. Yeah, sorry. Professional football I just did not like. It's very unique though. It was unique because you play just as one player in the pitch, you play as the striker. But because of that, if you do badly, then you don't get picked for the games. There is a reserves team which don't feature in any other cult games, but also there's the first team, and so if you don't do well in the first team, you get demoted to the reserves. If you don't do well in the reserves, then you don't get picked, and so a lot of the time you spend in this game is just waiting, training and waiting and trying to be popular with the manager. The training screens were just as frustrating because the game you had to do in training is you had to answer these questions and they were completely random. It felt random to me. And if you got the question right, you build up your stars on this blue bar. You can see I'm not doing very well. Um, and then as soon as you get into enough stars, you then could be picked for the game and then do well or not do well. But you can see there I got a question right and I got 3 stars, but I'm still only being the sub. So actually in this episode, I think I didn't play many games at all and I got completely frustrated by it. And I have to say, for me, this is one of the worst ones in the whole 17 games they did because you just spent a lot of time just waiting. And also, I thought the actual questions and the skill questions here were very random at times, and you didn't know, even though the percentages gave you a good chance of winning, it that didn't always was the case, I'm afraid. And yeah, I did not enjoy it. There are far better games than this one around that Cult Games did. It's kind of like, I would say, a very poor Football of the Year, a very poor striker, for instance. It's just crap. Sorry. Soccer 7, released in 1991. This was episode 85, released in January 2025. Views 820 plus. Overall rating 3 out of 5 stars. After the disappointment of professional football, we go to Soccer 7, which is a quite unique game because, as the number 7 mentions in the game, it's a 7-a-side football management game, which I don't see many at all. In fact, I think this is the only one I can see. The only others I see, the international 5-a-side or 5-a-side games. But this is 7-a-side, and it actually uses real life player names. So this is Liverpool, and they're the real squad names here. The greats like Rush, Aldridge, McMahon, Barnes, Beasley, all very good players. And yeah, it was a game that I thought was actually pretty decent. In some ways, it looks a little bit similar to international football and the font and everything like that. But other than that, you just select 7 players and then play against another team and see if you win or not. Bit of sound. Again, this is a game that you have to wait to see the other results, which I don't know why you had to do that. But I suppose you just want to see how well the other sides are getting on. Yeah, the actual waiting was a bit frustrating at times, but it's an enjoyable multiplayer game, definitely. We'll skip to, you can see where I'm getting the link to international football here because you've got your strips up there and then your team names. I think these are quite good graphical representation of the strips as well, the Arsenal strip and the Liverpool strip there. But I can see this very enjoyable for multiplayers, but as a single player, it's okay. Um, I would feature probably definitely in my top 10, but would it get top 5? You'll have to find out later, of course. But overall, yeah, Soccer 7, not too bad at all. Soccer Q, released in 1991. Now, this episode hasn't actually been released yet. It was going to be released much earlier than August 2025, but it got pushed back because of many other games that I want to do a lot earlier. But this is going to be released as episode 117 at the time of this recording, to be released hopefully in August 2025. So obviously there's no overall rating of this game yet, but if I did give it a rating, it will be about 2.5 to 3 stars, and you might hear me talking about it at right at the end of the video as well. Soccer Rivals, released in 1991. The episode here was episode 77, released in November 2024. Views 250 plus. Wasn't one of the great ones. Overall rating 2.5 stars. Now, have you ever thought what a football management game would be like if it was a board game, for instance, on your computer, if that makes sense? Well, Soccer Rivals was that game. Um, Definitely a pretty decent multiplayer game, this one. I could see it being pretty enjoyable with more than one person. There's a lot of basic details here. You can see here that the team players just had the position, no names, because I don't think they can really put players' names when there's only 5 characters per player name. Um, I can definitely see this as an enjoyable multiplayer game. It had its bugs though. If you go back to watching this episode, this is episode 77 by the way, so quite a recent episode, that the Liverpool player, I think as I played as Liverpool's boss, because I actually played as 4 players in this game, and as Liverpool boss, my marker landed on a player to be banned for life, and it was my goalie, and I only had one goalie in the game. So for the rest of this game, my Liverpool team would have no goalie because I could not change a player's position to goalie. So that was very bad luck, but it's definitely a very colourful game, and I can see this being very enjoyable with many people. As a one player, it's not really ideally suited to a one player game, but you have to credit this as one of the few board games for football on here. The other board games actually that became computer games were actually all board games as well. So you played the board game as well as on the computer. That was Brian Clough and Brian Robson's board games. But this was just a board game solely on the computer. Again, it was enjoyable to play, but I think it'd be much better as what it's suited for more than one player. Soccer Star, also known as Soccer Superior, released in 1988. It was episode 39, done in February 2024. The views, about 490 plus. Wasn't really one of my favourites. Overall rating, 2 out of 5 stars. Now, this game is slightly confusing, so bear with me. Basically, Soccer Star is the game we're looking at, but as you can see on this screen here, this is Soccer Superior, because they are basically exactly the same game. Hence why in this episode, which was episode 39, we looked at both of them at the same time, because the screens looked very, very similar, so I decided to put it on. So this game had sound. The sound got a little bit annoying at times though. It was pretty basic overall. I didn't like it that much. At least the players had ratings, I suppose, but other than that, there wasn't really much going for this game. We'll find you a actual. There we go. The highlight screen was quite good. I think it was one of the few plus points. This isn't just the highlights. There's more to this, by the way. Hopefully, we'll see it in a minute. You'll see a little match highlight screen pop up for a goal chance for yourself or your opponents. Are we going to pick one where there's no? Oh, here we go. But the problem with this was our little goal celebration there, which was quite fun. The problem with this match highlight screen is that it reminded me of Sunday League football. When the ball is being kicked, then literally everyone follows the ball at times. And yeah, the match highlights was okay. It's probably the best bit of this game. It does remind me also a bit of the League Challenge, that awful football game that we reviewed many months ago. But overall, Soccer Star, Soccer Superior, it's very basic. It wasn't one of my favourites. There's a lot worse than this though. But yeah, that's it. Striker, released in 1988, episode 44, March 2024. It was released on my Retro series. A very popular game, this one. It has been viewed many times. Total views currently, at time of this recording, was 1.3k. Expecting to be a lot more. Overall rating, definitely a 5 out of 5 star game, this one, and the second best of the football games done by Cult Games, I think. So we go to another really good cult football game, and a very popular game. I can see why this has had so many views. This is Striker, of course, another very unique game when you take the part of the striker. Obviously, you can choose your team, you can choose your nationality, and then what makes this game so good is the match highlight screen, which is basically you with the football with limited time trying to kick the ball into the goal using angles and stuff like that. So if you're good at mathematics as a kid, you're probably in trigonometry, especially, you probably would really enjoy this game. Um, there's so many good things about Striker. Even though I was crap at this, I really enjoyed playing this. And again, on the Facebook group, so many people have put in so many positive comments about this game. It's worth also looking at another episode we did was Euro Striker, which was like an updated version of Striker. But here I was Donut, 18 years old, played for Wales, not England. Here is the match highlight screen. So also you get the chance of being picked for the game or not being picked or being a substitute, but it was a lot less. You had more chances of playing this game than professional footballer, where you just spent waiting ages and ages until you get your chance. Here on Striker, even if you were hopeless, you would still get the chance to have an attempt and score a goal. And we're just waiting for, of course, this video's just, as always we've done with the other quick episodes, quick videos, we're playing this as I'm chatting along. So we have to choose the highlights where there's no highlights whatsoever, didn't we? So I'm going to, here we go, review of a chance. I've found one. So this is what makes, I think, the game so unique. You come up with this alert saying you are through with a chance, and then you take the chance. But here we go. But then you just get a limited time, and then you have to get the angles right. And there you go. I got the angles right, but I missed. So, well, the goalie saved it. So again, a lot of people found this really enjoyable. Training. You get training where you can then experiment with the angles, making sure you know where they go and without risking and missing a chance in a natural game. So this is always good to do first. So you always get plenty of chances to practice. Like again, that was a good chance by me, but the goalie seemed to be saving it. I did score some goals in this game. I did actually get better and better as the game went on. Oh, you've been injured and taken off, but sometimes you get injured, and so when you're on form, you get injured sometimes. But let's go back to the training again. So here we go. Let's see if we can actually find one of me. Oh, did I score? No, I missed. I seem to be showing you all the highlights of me missing. Not really what I wanted to do. Oh, this is a difficult one. Oh, I actually scored that one. Yay, found one that would score. Let's end it on a high. So anyway, that is Striker. Striker, very good game. Especially as it was a budget game, I can see why it had so many people enjoying playing it. Yeah, it's a classic. Will it be in my top 5? It's hard not for me to say it won't be, because I think by how much I've commented how I enjoyed this game, it definitely will be in the top 5. But will it be the best one? We'll have to wait and see. Well, if you quickly notice one of the screens, you can see where it was. So that kind of gave it away a bit. But anyway, Striker, what a great game it was. Striker Manager, 1988. It was episode 45, the episode just after Striker, released in April 2024. Total views for this, 670 plus views. Wasn't one of my favourites. An overall rating of 2.5 stars. After Striker was released, the next game in the series became Striker Manager. Now, Striker Manager and Striker were closely linked in two ways. One was that obviously it was another cult game. The second one was that you took part as the manager as well as the striker in this game. So when the match highlight screen came up, you then had the choice, even though you didn't have many chances though, of scoring a goal. This is why this game was a kind of like a poor relation to striker, because the lack of chances you had when in the match highlights of scoring. The way striker manager the way to score a goal in Striker Manager was very similar to Striker, that you had an angles, but the difference here was it was up and down, while Striker was left and right on the angles. Uh, this had a lot of decent options though, but I rated it quite low because the time you had to wait. Here we go. You had to wait until these highlight screen came. There was quite a few times when you were playing this game that you had one or two options and that was it. And also these options chances were quite difficult, or it could have been because I wasn't very good at it. But there was some sound in this game. I think it was decent in places, but because you had to wait until your chances and because the chances were quite difficult at times, I rated it a bit low. So anyway, yep, that is Striker Manager. And the final game of the cult games for the Football Management series was, well, in alphabetical order anyway, World Cup, released in 1988. Episode 53, released in June 2024. Views 470 plus. Overall rating, a quite decent 4 out of 5 stars. Now, you remember that classic game called Tracksuit Manager? Very, very popular game. Now, if you ever wanted a budget version of Tracksuit Manager, then look at World Cup by Cult Games, obviously. This reminded me very much of a budget version of that classic game. And in this game, very similar to the Tracksuit Manager game, you had your list of players and nationalities and stuff like that. You can type in your own players' names in and then select them, becoming your World Cup squad. And in this case, I became manager of Mordor. I just did something different for a change. And yeah, it reminded me very much of Tracksuit Manager, and that's why I thought this was actually quite a decent game. Even one thing it had better than Tracksuit Manager, because remember, Tracksuit Manager just had commentary for the game. This actually had a match screen, even though it wasn't the best match screens. But you could go for each of these players. You can see who are your best players. You have to select your team of 20. It was 20 in those days, not 26 now, I think, of who you want to take to your World Cup qualifying and everything like this. And then you can select your teams who you want to play against, and team tactics screen. Yeah, you can see it's very similar to Tracksuit Manager, but if we just skim through all these screenshots here and see an actual game being played, I think what let it down a bit was this match highlight screen. Even though this match highlight screen, this was normal speed, I think, as well, was it was okay, but I think it could have been improved on. But you have to keep remembering this wasn't a full price game. This was a budget game. But overall, I thought it was a good game. It definitely would feature in my top 10, but would it feature in my top 5? Then you have to find out. You'll find out straight after this look at World Cup. But anyway, that is World Cup, and that's the end of the 17 games. What you'll see now is my top 5. So you've seen all the videos, you've seen all my explanations, and you saw all my ratings. So what would you classify as my top 5 cult football games? Well, here is the top 5 on your screen right now. So number 1 obviously is On the Bench. Very superior game, especially as it was a budget game. I put Striker as number 2 because it was very unique and very fun, even though I was pretty hopeless at playing it. Number 3 probably will be a surprise for many of you is Cup Football. Again, another very enjoyable game, which I definitely did enjoy. And also another surprise would be League Football at number 4. Again, took me by surprise how much I actually enjoyed it. And then international football comes in at number 5. Uh, it's good to see that Cult Games did an international football version of this game and the management game, and yeah, it was very enjoyable. Uh, just outside the top 5 would have been World Cup. World Cup again was another game that I did enjoy, and yeah, that's the top 5 overall. As you might have noticed, none of the multiplayer ones are in there because obviously, as I was only playing it by myself, I didn't really enjoy it if on the aspect of more people enjoying this game. But I'm sure some of these multiplayer games, like Two-Player Soccer Squad, for instance, would have been featured into the top 5 if more than one person was reviewing this game. The ones that weren't so good, which we probably won't mention, you don't see on this screen here. I probably will say Professional Football is probably one of the worst because it's so frustrating that you'll spend a lot of the time just waiting until you actually become the striker and get a chance to score goals and stuff like that. I thought the multiple choice was a bit strange for it as well. Um, Soccer Rivals, I can see the uniqueness about it because it's set on sort of like a Monopoly board, but it would be pretty enjoyable as a multiplayer game. But I found it pretty disappointing when I was playing it as well. The Footballer, again, another one, was very basic to look at, and I would say that's not one of the best ones. And finally, I would say Soccer Star will be down in the worst ones as well for basically the same reasons. It's a very basic game and can be quite frustrating at times. But anyway, that is the whole episode done. I hope you enjoyed this special, seeing all the 17 cult games that they did, the football games. And let me know if you enjoyed this. Please subscribe if you haven't already. It's always good to have new people joining us, and comment on this video. Tell me which ones were your favorites, which ones you didn't like. Was some of these games a bit of a surprise of my top 5, for instance? And did you agree with my bottom games as well? Yeah, it'd be just great to hear from you. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll chat to you soon. Donut Donny saying goodbye. What are your thoughts about this game? Please let me know in the comments. Many thanks for watching this video. Greatly appreciated. If you like this channel, please send me a like or subscribe.